Hey everyone, welcome back to The Moment. It's Friday. I'm your host, Meredith Lynch. With me, as always, is my wonderful co-host and partner in crime, Rebecca Sananès. And we are so excited because we have a special guest co-host today. We are joined by Anna Malaika Tubbs, a two-time New York Times bestselling author. Anna is an expert on race and gender in the U.S. She holds a PhD in sociology and a master's in multidisciplinary gender studies from the University of Cambridge. Her writing, right? Her writing has appeared in Time, New York Magazine, Newsweek, The Guardian, and more. She's given a TED Talk. She's the mom of 3, and she still found time to co-host with us this morning. Anna, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to jump into the conversation.
I know we have a lot to talk about. I know we have a lot we want to talk about, but I do want to, like, literally, how do you do what, like, you have 3 kids, you have a PhD, like, how do you keep it together? How do you do that?
I could not do it without our incredible nanny. She makes my life happen, and I thank her in my acknowledgement section of my books. She is really one of the most important people in our life, and I think that a lot of moms, we have been told for so long to not shout out the people who help us make it happen. It's a part of this, like, trick to tell women that we're supposed to do it all somehow, and that's not true. We're not supposed to parent alone, and so my husband and I are really fortunate that we are able to have that support, and it's something that I advocate for on a national level, right? Access to affordable and quality childcare so that everybody can have the support that they deserve.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. I feel like, yeah, that, like, brings us sort of right into our conversation today. I guess maybe, let's start and talk about, like, the big headlines, because, like, we can't not talk about Epstein. What a week. Did anybody, like, on Wednesday when that came out, that there was, like, this whole new trove of Epstein emails? What was your reaction? Like,
my reaction has been the same, I think, consistently throughout this. I don't find any of it surprising. I think it's wild that we've been able to just let it kind of stretch out for this long. I'm grateful that Alita Grijalva is finally sworn in so that this could finally happen. I'm grateful for all of the advocates who have tried for so long to get this information out there. And I'm curious, I guess, to see if this is finally the moment that people can admit that he's associated with bad people and he's done bad things. And that feels like we know that. It's been proven over and over and over again. So I'm curious, but I'm also not sure how much of a difference it's going to make. I'm hopeful, though.
Yeah, I think I feel similarly to that, because it's like, one of the things that I keep thinking about is how much the Trump administration and the MAGA movement, which has also, spun into the MAHA movement, has used the idea of protecting children as like sort of their battle cry, rather whether it's, hey, we need to protect children from vaccines, or we need to protect children from human trafficking, or we need to, we need to protect them from, rhetoric around race and gender and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, just the very basic idea of keeping children safe did not happen on the watch of so many people who are connected to this administration, or who are literally this administration. So I'm kind of like watching how this is going to be spun. And I will just say, like, sometimes I think one of the best places to find out, like, how the MAGA movement is responding is to look at the way that MAGA is responding to videos that I make on social media. And one of them was just like, you are so obsessed with Trump. And I like love that. That's one of their things. When this stuff comes out, they go, you're just obsessed with Trump. And I'm like, he is the president.
Yeah.
Of the country.
I'll pay some attention to him. Yeah, we
should. Like it's not like I'm obsessed with some, like, random reality star, but at the end of the day, I mean, if the shoe fits, he kind of is done.
But also, like, are you obsessed with him? Like, I don't know. I'm like,
I'm not really obsessed with him.
Yeah, like, who
is just paying attention? I mean, God forbid a woman who's intelligent is paying attention and making comments.
God forbid.
States of America.
Wait, okay. We have a clip of somebody who is like, it is going to be fascinating to see how people who have like historically supported Trump, how they are going to deal with this, because it is, you know, and I've started to see things, and I think let's play this clip of Megyn Kelly on her show and how she's decided to deal with these latest.
Somebody very, very close to this case. And this person has told me from the start that Jeffrey Epstein, in this person's view, was not a pedophile, but that he was into the barely legal type. Like he liked 15-year-old girls, that he wasn't into like 8-year-olds, but he liked the very young teen types that could pass for even younger than they were, but would look legal to a passerby. And it wasn't until we heard from Pam Bondi that they had tens of thousands of videos of alleged, forgive me, they used to call it kiddie porn, now they call it child sexual abuse material, on his computer, that for the first time I thought, oh no, he was an actual pedophile. I mean, only a pedophile gets off on young children abuse videos. I don't know what's true about him, but we have yet to see anybody come forward and say, I was under 10, I was under 14 when I first came within his purview. There's a difference between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Oh, disgusting.
Okay, I want to throw it to you, Anna, because I feel like, you know, your whole body of work is about the patriarchy. Why do we do this to girls specifically? Like, what makes a 15-year-old girl not a child?
I have to start first by kind of explaining a little bit about how I view the world and how I see our country and the original organization of our nation, and how it led to so much of this, and how even in the US we were behind in terms of raising the legal age of consent as compared to other places across the world. But in the US, we live in a patriarchy. It is how our founding fathers set up the system of the United States of America. They defined men as the ones who had access to rights that women did not have access to, that men could own land, that men could vote, and you know, the list goes on and on. But they left women out of the Constitution entirely, and this was purposeful. They did not want women to vote or participate politically or participate outside of the home. They wrote letters to their wives and to their daughters, some very creepy letters to their daughters especially, about how women were just supposed to be obedient. Women were supposed to just reproduce the power of men through children, that women really didn't have an identity of our own, but only the identity either of our fathers or of our future husbands. And so that's really how our entire nation was built, this binary of man, woman, but also that left out a lot of people from the definition of man and woman. Of course, they were not considering people who were enslaved. They were not considering their indigenous counterparts. They weren't even really considering poor white people. They had a very clear idea in mind of who they considered to be elite and worthy of being treated as a human being. But still within that, they were always suppressing the women and the girls in their lives, wanting to control their every move, and really use them however they saw fit. And so we've seen that historically throughout the United States in our history, where even by state, it differs who gets to be considered of legal consent age. It's not across the United States still. To be a girl and to be a woman in the US means that depending on which state you live in, you might have access to certain rights and protections, or you might not. And so Megyn Kelly is showing exactly the problem, that we do not protect girls in our nation. We do not consider them worthy of being able to be treated with respect or with dignity. It's disgusting to me when you see a woman herself start to find ways to protect these horrific men who abused so many girls. And for her then just decide arbitrarily, oh, well, none of them were under the age of 14, you know, they were 15. It's really wild to see it, but also is in alignment with what we've seen historically. There's a lot of women who protect the system because they see some role or they see some way in which they are valued in it, but it's only in how they can reproduce the power of men. And many of them don't fully realize that.
I feel like I don't know. This is something that I've thought a lot about in this story. Like when I saw the birthday book, and like, don't get me wrong, it was like foul and terrifying. And this man was a very specific type of monster. And I was like, I don't know. I kind of remember that's how people talked about girls and women when it was 2003. You know, like I do think that there's also this thing where I'm like, this is just the culture. Like this is an extreme version of the culture. It's touching the White House and like all these men in power. But I'm like, yeah, like let's not pretend, you know, like I saw somebody point out like, oh, somebody said if there's grass in the field, play. And they were like, wow, that's horrific. And I'm like, it is horrific. And like boys and men were saying that around me during that time period too. Like, let's not pretend that this isn't.
I think it's, I agree. And I think it's commentary on how hard we've had to fight for those comments to change or for them to become unacceptable or no longer politically correct. Because you're right, for so long, if you go back and to see even interviews that people would do with men on the streets, they would say things like this as if it was normal, as if it was okay, largely because this is a patriarchy that we've been living in. And so that's a really important point to make. And it also showcases how hard activists, women, allies have had to fight for us to even get to a point where we can look back at those comments and say that is absolutely wrong, incorrect, disgusting. A comment to the liberal women who fought for our rights and for us to be here, because we can't take that for granted. We had to claim our right to even say, no, you cannot speak about women and girls in this way, and you cannot treat women and girls this way. That wasn't always a given.
Should we talk about liberal feminism for a second?
Perfect segue, yes.
We want to talk about are women ruining the workplace? First of all, this came out from the New York Times. We didn't talk about it in the last show. You know, the first thing that comes to mind for me, or like I listened to this was a Ross Douthat interview with two conservative feminists, and I listened to the thing in its entirety, and I want to hear all your takes. But I do like the thing that just irked me more than anything other than like everything was conservative feminism doesn't exist. Or am I wrong?
No, it's not a thing. Those two words, unfortunately, do not go together. It would be the same as saying somebody like Megyn Kelly in her comments is somehow advocating for women. No, that's what we would get with conservative feminism. We would get, again, this notion that consent and the age of consent could be less than 18 or should be 12, et cetera. It's completely an oxymoron to say that a conservative feminist could exist and what they would advocate for. And that conversation, I didn't listen to all of it because, you know, we just don't know
mental health.
But it was enough for us to see, again, this conversation of how far we've come and what we've had to fight for, and then to be told that we ruined something as it used to exist. And that's really actually the point, is we are trying to ruin the things that initially did not work for everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Filled with dehumanization and horrible treatment of people. And I talk about in my work how a lot of companies replicate American patriarchy. They want this system of domination where only a certain group of people gets access to resources or gets attention or gets to speak up, right? Or vote. And that's how so many of our systems have been set up. And so absolutely, yes, if that's the question, did we ruin these environments that were not equitable? Then for sure, I guess we can call it ruining it, and maybe we should ruin some more things. But the question I think that we should be asking is, why did men build systems this way to begin with? That's a more interesting question to me. But of course, that interview was two women talking about how others had ruined the workplace. So I think, there is some clear similarities here in the conversation with Megyn Kelly protecting a horrific system and these two others protecting another. We just become so comfortable with patriarchy, truly. I mean, certain groups do. I'm not, but I think there are some people who are very comfortable with it and they want it to stay as it is.
Well, maybe they think they benefit from it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I go back to kind of my way of looking at this original social order of the United States, and you see that even if white women were oppressed by the men in their lives, at least they were acknowledged as playing some role, as opposed to a lot of the groups that were completely dehumanized and told that they didn't have access to any kind of humane treatment. And I think a lot of white women, not all white women, but a lot of white women actually do feel comfortable and protected and acknowledged in the system of American patriarchy. And they find themselves oftentimes protecting it because they're aware that there is this made up ladder of humanity that they don't want to slide down. And so I think that that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes it's subconscious protection, and sometimes it's fully conscious. I want to protect my place here.
So what do you think Megyn Kelly's motivation is in making a statement like that? And how do you think she would react to that conversation of like, did women ruin the workplace? Megyn Kelly is a woman who holds a lot of power, even if, you know, we don't love that or we don't want to admit it. Like, how does she fit into this as an entity herself?
Yeah, I would say a lot of her power comes from attention, right? So I do think that she's aware of things that she'll say that will get shared, that will get commented on, and that will increase her viewership. I think that a lot of it comes down to that. And I also think that she just thinks it's okay to continue to operate this way. And I think as much as she's critical to perhaps of others and those who don't agree with her, she will always bring to the light the ones who align with her, and she's going to continue to bring attention to that. And so I think it's really a question of how attention brings her more and more power.
I don't even know if like this is worth a question, but I'm just going to ask it because I don't have children. Rebecca, I don't have children that I know of. That's what I'll say.
I have dogs. My dogs are my children.
But Rebecca and I don't have children. And you have 3 children. Megyn Kelly has 3 children. And, you know, I don't want to lean into the gender of Megyn Kelly's children, although she's probably like, please do. But like she has 2 boys and a girl. And I just don't understand, like, I don't have children, so maybe I can't fully speak to this, but how do you sit on TV and say what she just said and then walk off as a mother? Like, that's what is like ticking in my brain.
That's such a good question. And I don't know. I couldn't do it. I don't have an answer to it. I think perhaps it's that she never thinks it's going to apply to her children.
Yeah.
I mean, we see that happen all the time where people will make comments and be okay with other people being dehumanized and other children being dehumanized, or finding some justification for why, right? Maybe if we go even deeper into her opinion of these young women and girls, she would maybe say that they got themselves into it, or maybe they should have made different decisions, right? The victim blaming that is also very consistent with conservative women who think that somehow they would have risen above it, or they wouldn't have fallen for something like this, or some, whatever justification they would come up with. So the only thing I could say is perhaps she thinks that this would never apply to her.
Right.
Okay. I want to like get into it. We may or may not have another guest coming yet, but I think we should just get into it. But one of the, just to piggyback off of this, a friend sent me back in 2023, Megyn Kelly rightfully went off on Russell Brand, who was dating a 16-year-old when he was 31. And she was like, this is disgusting. I think she specifically called it pedophilia and said, I'm unsubscribing. And what I find so fascinating is I don't think she does sleep. I don't think she actually does think this. I think that she and Republicans are going to have to figure out how they are going to answer to this for Trump. When they, as you said, Meredith, is they've made it so central to their identity, that they are protecting the children from like, I don't know, woke trans ideology or something.
Red Dye 40.
Say it again. Red Dye 40.
40.
Oh yeah.
And so like, yeah, like, okay, so this is what I have been really fascinated by and watching this week is like, they're all either going to have to completely contort themselves, as Megyn Kelly did yesterday. And I think she was giving a model of it. And I think Jesse Waters has started to do this, or they're gonna have to deal with what's in front of them. And what I have found really, really fascinating this week is it's the first time that I've seen daylight between the Republican Party and Donald Trump. Can we play? We have a clip from Thomas Massey, a representative from Kentucky who was working with Ro Khanna, who's been on this show, to release the Epstein files. Can we play that clip and then talk about it?
Yeah.
For Republicans on this vote is that Trump will protect you if you vote the wrong way. In other words, if you vote to cover up for pedophiles, you've got cover in a Republican primary. But I would remind my colleagues that this vote is going to be on your record for longer than Trump is going to be president. And what are you going to do in 2028 and 2030 when you're in a debate, either with a Republican or a Democrat, and they say, how can we trust you? You covered up for a pedophile back in 2025.
Well, here's my thought on this.
Please.
Is this the scene in The Wizard of Oz when the house lands on the witch and they come out and they're sort of like, we can be brave again, right? I don't know. But I was saying to somebody last night, I said, could this be the opportunity for like us to move back to a slightly more normal Republican Party where a Senator Susan Collins can go, you know what? No, I'm making this up, voting against gay marriage. I'm not going there. Or I'm not going to pass your big, beautiful bill. Like, is this the opening? And this, my friend said, no, I don't think so. But I kind of think it is. Maybe I'm wrong.
I've been hoping for this moment. I keep asking, this is the time for so many Republicans to shine, actually, right? Like the whole country, I mean, not the whole country, but so many of us are sitting here thinking, how is this possible? How are we allowing this to happen? Why are all these Republicans just falling in line? And this is the time to really become a star, like show up and say, I do not stand for this. These are not American values. We might disagree on some other policy, but when it comes to some things, I will put my foot down. And really, we would remember them. All of us, would laud them for just standing up for the right thing.
I'm going to remember Thomas Massey, right? I'm going to be like, okay, look, we disagree on 98% of things, but 2% is super important.
Yeah, now I'm like, great, we love you, keep that up. And I think that gives them even, many politicians are really just trying to be reelected. It's another issue that we could talk about for years, but I would now consider supporting this kind of person. I'm like, okay, great. At the very least, you have enough morality in you to stand for children. Wonderful. Great. Let's start there.
I feel like, okay, I fall somewhere in between these things where like, I don't think we're going to suddenly see like a moral spine backbone from the Republicans. But what I do see is I think that they are accepting that Trump is not going to be on the ticket in 2028. I think that they're looking at this and they're like, look, we did not... that like Democrats swept in the special elections this past week and Trump wasn't on the ticket. And so like, what happens to the Republican Party when Trump isn't on the ticket? And so I think that there's some like reshuffling in there where they're like, this actually really is a lame duck president that doesn't have power beyond this. And like you said, in 2028, if you're going to be running for president, do you want to have to answer to people who like we've all universally decided pedophilia is the line? Megyn Kelly doesn't have to because she's not a politician. But like that's what I think is like, I think it's less about like they'll finally find their moral backbone. Although I think Thomas Massey like has found like it's hard to be the first one out.
Yeah, I'm proud of him.
Trump, apparently, reportedly, went into the Situation Room on Wednesday. The Situation Room where it's like, you know, that picture of Hillary Clinton, like when they caught Osama bin Laden, like the Situation Room is for when you catch Osama bin Laden. And he went in there to talk about the Epstein files with his core team. And he was calling Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and trying to get their names off the discharge petition to open up the rest of the Epstein files. And he couldn't make them budge. And it's like, Marjorie Taylor Greene's out here on her revenge tour. And I just am like, that's what I'm seeing is like less likely that they're going to find a backbone, but more that they're like, yeah, what are my ambitions? What does the Republican Party look like? And like, do we have to dump Trump in this way now?
Yeah. Can I say, if I had access to a Situation Room, I would go there all the time. That would be like my sensory deprivation room. I went in a Waymo the other day and I was like, I don't need to go to therapy anymore. I just need to get in a Waymo like twice a week and drive to nowhere. This is incredible. So I bet the Situation Room's got like a nice like spread of like peanuts and like some like Pepsis and fresh ice. And I don't think they have Coke products. I don't know why. But
I don't think Trump loves Diet Coke.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, this is the Situation Room I'm picturing. This is the one in my brain. Anyway, I think, I do think this is an interesting time. And I do think, I keep going back to the conversation. We had Representative Jake Auchincloss on recently. And one of the things we asked him was like, oh, you know, like, why aren't they pushing back again? Why aren't Republicans pushing back more against Trump? Right. And he was like, they're scared. And so I think part of this is like, some of them, I'm like, I don't even know if it's like they're really morally thinking like this is so awful, right? Because like Trump's done some really awful. Like, I'm not saying this isn't really bad. I'm just saying like, you know, there's really awful stuff that there's like really awful stuff that every president does, but that's a different episode, right? But
I also wonder. I mean, what does he have on all of them, right? This is also a question. Right. We think we're dealing with like normal human beings. Kind of not. And I think you can see that. You can see it with everybody who's associated with him. In my book, I talk about like the wretchedness that you can see within them. They all, to me, seem to be hiding something or have, you know, other reasons, or maybe they're being paid. Like all of these things are not just conspiracy theories, but we're starting to see real receipts for that. And so that also explain why they don't have any quote unquote backbone. But I do think, like you said, Rebecca, it'll come down to, but do you all want to have future careers at all? Yeah. Because maybe this is the time, excuse me, to distance yourself.
That's what I just think that this might be like, it's not that I think they're going to find a moral, like suddenly the old Republican Party is going to come back, which by the way, I was like never really an old Republican Party.
No, we're not like, we don't fuck with that, you guys.
Yeah, but I can respect, you know, like we can respect differences when it's not like totally dubious. But here I'm like, I think it's the timing. And then here's my other hot take from all of this is if I were Trump and I wasn't either very certain or very worried that something was in the Epstein files, I would just nip it in the bud here. You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you just be like that's what I found fascinating is I remember when the Birthday book came out and I was like, and he came out, or Caroline Leavitt really came out and was like, it's a hoax. We don't know. Somebody put it in there. Like, we don't know where it came from. And everybody was like, that's ridiculous. Somebody in 2003 slipped in a fake Trump letter because they knew that Donald Trump was someday going to run for president. Like, that's insane. But the only reason to obfuscate there is because if you're like, this is like the tip of the iceberg. Like, I don't want it to keep going. And then the same thing happened here. And so to me, I'm like, is there must be something in those files that's even worse than these emails. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also just brings us to this concern generally of those who are such diehard supporters of him, like less those who are elected officials and even just like the general public who will get behind him no matter what. You're just realizing that the news that they're hearing, right, is so completely swayed, it's incomplete, because if they all have agreed that Jeffrey Epstein is a bad guy who did horrible things to children, right? And despite what Megyn Kelly is saying, 15-year-olds are children, indeed. Yeah. Then now, how is it possible that every single time something comes out and confirms it over and over and over again, that they are still being persuaded to believe that these are somehow lies, or the Democrats are making these things up because actually the Democrats are the ones that have these pedophilia, you know, like, how is it that they are still hearing these messages? And that is such a primary concern, because no matter what, we do have to see who the messengers are to them. Yeah. They are really, truly still, so many of them, just falling in line, believing that this is an entire scam against the president of the United States, no matter how many times he is implicated in the emails, no matter how many times his name shows up. And so, yeah, I think there needs to be a clear conversation on the messengers to this general audience.
Also, for what it's worth, I'm like, take the Democrats down that are in the Epstein files.
Absolutely. Like, yes.
Oh my God, I don't care.
Right? Like
yes. People keep saying Bill Clinton's in the Epstein files. I'm like, great.
He's good. He's been a problem for a long freaking time. Like,
all that Bill Clinton does is shuffle around a bookstore in Nantucket. He's not an issue for me right now. He's not.
That won't hurt the Democratic Party's, ability to get people elected if we do question every single person who is named in the files. I think that is absolutely the way forward. This is not a partisan issue. This is completely,
it shouldn't be.
We're protecting children, period.
I mean, I think that's sort of the difference between, where a lot of people fall with the Democratic Party and where people fall with not the Republican Party, but with Trump and MAGA specifically. MAGA, yeah. And I think what this goes back to is the principles of cult leadership, which that is really what I believe is at play here with Trump. And that is what Caroline Leavitt is briefed on how to do. This is not just working with your regular president, where I could have things that I would criticize about, President Obama or President Biden, et cetera. People are diehard, and that's the real difference here. And I was wondering,
going in any other world, the president would be done. Imagine if these emails had come out about Obama. It is so right. It is so insane. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I just Anna, I would love to know from your perspective, what role class plays in this. Because I feel this idea that these folks are being manipulated in this way is really in a lot of ways tied to class. And I would love to know from your work how that plays out.
That's interesting. I mean, because in voter data, we see kind of across socioeconomic status, quite similar ways of voting for white women. I will say that's one area where class is not making a huge difference. I mean, I think there is some data showing that educated women with higher degrees are maybe a little bit more liberal. I don't have the exact numbers here, but it's not as staggering as you would expect, is all I have to say there. So I think, yes, class does play a role in terms of some of the media literacy that illiteracy that we are seeing across the United States. But I think that this has been an attack on all of our education. And I think many of us really have no clue how to navigate the information we're seeing on social media, the information that we were taught in our schools, right, that for so long has tried to erase histories of how far we've come, right? Instead, we're being presented this notion that we were always a democratic nation, we were always equal somehow, and we don't want students to know that activists had to fight for us to have these basic rights, because then we find ourselves right now in a situation where people who do have access to resources and are educated, as well as those who do not and have not been able to maybe even seek higher education, still asking questions about how this is such a horrible, time that we're living in. And this is the worst that it's ever been in the United States of America. And we don't know what to do. And that to me is a signal of a really poor understanding of American history. Yes, times right now are really horrible. I'm not trying to minimize that. We're living through a lot of horrible circumstances. But this is not the worst that it's ever been in the United States of America. And if we don't know how far we've had to come and how much we've had to fight for every single right, and that's why they're still so vulnerable, then we really have no idea how to resist. So I would say, yes, class plays a role, but I also think generally our common knowledge as Americans has been under attack. And we are seeing the results of that right now. Across class, across socioeconomic status, people are really confused on American history.
This is one of the reasons, not to go backwards, but this is one of the reasons the New York Times article drove me nuts. I'm like, you know what liberal feminist, I'm not even going to say liberal feminism because feminism is inherently progressive because it must be. But you know what feminists brought us? Credit cards. In 1972, my mother was 15 or, this is not that long ago that we got credit cards. And how can you dare talk about conservative feminism and ruining the workplace when and we can talk about the girl boss of it all, the aesthetics of feminism I have problems with in the past, whatever, but how dare you? This is the history that brought us the credit card and ability to not have to get married in order to sustain. Meanwhile, I'm sorry, now I'm on my soapbox. Meanwhile, we have a Christian nationalist movement that is tied to the administration that's out here saying should think pieces should we repeal the 19th Amendment? Should women own, should there be one vote per household? It's insane.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, and I agree. And I think that that's why, this understanding of where we've been is so important because if instead we're being presented with, the people who want to tell you about, let's say the civil rights movement in the United States, they want you to hate your country. And how dare they try to tell you that we were not this wonderful nation from the beginning. When instead, actually, that's just what allows us to keep moving towards progress. We have a long way to go. We've come a really long way. I often say the U.S. is a really young country, right? Relatively. It's 250 years old. I did my graduate work at Cambridge, and I remember the first time I got there, and they gave me this little pullover that said that it was established in 1209. And I looked and I was like, whoa, no, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But it made me realize just how young the United States is, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, there were conversations that were happening in Cambridge about should we decolonize Cambridge? It was a question, should we decolonize Cambridge? And I did my undergraduate work in the Bay Area where student activism is everything. And the question, should we, we would think they're really behind on this conversation.
Yeah.
And so it was this kind of dual moment of, okay, we are really young and we're having some really important conversations in the US, and we should be really proud of that. I am still very, very proud of our nation because it's been a story of two different groups, right? There's a spectrum in these groups, but it's been one that wanted to keep this original social order that we talked about at the beginning and wanted to make sure that not everybody had access to these rights, right? And these opportunities. And then there's been those who said that doesn't work for us. That doesn't serve us. I want to be treated as the human being that I am. I want my children to have access to opportunities. And I'm going to fight for our country to get closer to my vision of what is possible here. It's not been that throughout these 250 years, those who were always in power and who felt like they were served by this original social order just decided one day, I'm going to give rights to people. I really like today's the day that I see
an idea.
Should we give women rights? No,
women
it's not.
Finally earned rights.
It's because we fought for that. And that's something to be incredibly proud of.
Yeah.
That is what we've accomplished in those 250 years, despite this group trying to keep us so close to what is not American democracy. And what I talk about in my work is American patriarchy tells us that only one group of people is supposed to have power. But American democracy tells us that power is vested in all of the people of a nation. And we have yet to see that, but we have gotten closer to it. And so I think these moments, like 2025, where it feels like so much is falling apart and there's a lot of regression, is actually a testament to the victories that we have achieved. And so any attack against those victories, including erasing our knowledge of those victories, really is a signal of the weakness of that initial system. And I think we just have to find more resolve in that, more hope in that, and continue to fight for that vision.
Yeah,
I would argue you also need to find those moments of joy, right? And so as we wrap up our time here today, this has been such an amazing conversation. We're so grateful to have you with us here today, Anna. We want everyone to go pick up your book. I think we have an image of it that we're going to throw up. Oh my gosh, such a beautiful cover too.
Oh, I know, the designer did a great job. Yeah.
So we always end the show by asking ourselves or asking one another, what is having a moment for us? So I'm going to kick it off because I have something that's having a moment for me, and it's going to completely throw everything we just talked about out the window in some people's opinion, but not in mine. You know what's having a moment for me? This Ilia, it's like a lip crayon, but it's super creamy and like it goes on almost like a lipstick. And have you guys ever used Ilia Cosmetics?
No, but everybody's talking about them. By the way, this is not SwanCon.
No, are you kidding? They had a lunch at Great White. You think they would have let me in? No, I don't even think they would have let me walk down the street that day. So this is not sponsored.
I'm so sad about Great White. All right,
I know. Right. Also, too, it's like, oh, Great White. I should have. Anyway.
I know. Yeah.
No.
But for those not in LA, Great White is a restaurant here that has had some serious issues with racism come out recently. Sorry, go ahead.
Had great food.
So anyway, I'm loving this lip crayon, and I think I'm going to go buy it in another color, and I just want to make a plug for it. And I'll say, like, the other day I saw someone post like, hey guys, I know the Sephora sale is happening, but you know, everyone needs to be donating to SNAP benefits this month. So don't buy anything from the Sephora sale. Please donate to your local food bank. And I'm not saying don't donate to your local food bank. And this is going to be like my Megyn Kelly moment that gets me canceled. But like, you know what? I still need blush, okay? Because the patriarchy exists. And you know what? When I was 4 years old, I wanted Tinkerbell makeup. You know, the like makeup that they used to sell at CVS when you would go to check out. And my mother didn't wear makeup. So it's like, this is all little Meredith being like, that's what I like. So anyway, just to say, sometimes the thing that's having a moment for you is a really nice lip pencil. But Anna, what's having a moment for you right now? And it doesn't have to be makeup.
I love that. I love those moments of joy. I think that's so important. Goodness, what is having a moment for me right now? I was in Paris last week, I will say. I was speaking at the Women's Forum, their annual conference, and it was just really, really amazing to be there with other feminist activists across the world, and we're all on this larger team together because it can feel so overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. But I was speaking about the importance of us understanding these patriarchal systems in each of the nations that we live, because I feel like they actually operate very differently. And I think moving forward, the way to finally dismantle this on a global level is for us to get really specific about how the leaders of each of our nations have used the rules that they've made up to keep women subjugated and oppressed, and also how we're responding with such power and such resilience and joy. So that's what I've been kind of just ruminating on and just still letting it all sink in. And I'm excited. I feel like there's still a lot of hope. I'm full of hope and joy.
Rebecca, what about you? What's having a moment for you?
Okay. What's having a moment for me is my poor dog has had terrible arthritis all week. He's my senior old man. He's 12 years old. And like this, for the first time this week, it's been like an actual thing. And so senior dogs are having a moment for me. I'm just like, you know, he's so like resilient, and he's been with me through so much, and to like be able to have seen him go from like this like puppy with like rambunctious energy, and he still does, like he'll be okay. But yeah, senior dogs are having a moment for me. Everybody loves a puppy, but a senior dog is just as good.
So sweet.
He's the best. Dr. Anna Tubbs, it has been like just an absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful that you're here. I have a million more things. We have to do it again because
Come back soon.
I want to ask you about the male loneliness epidemic. I want to ask you, like, I have and child care in America, so many things.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a joy, and I would come back anytime you'll have me.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody.